Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek, and welcome to day 15 of my 31 Days of Halloween reviews. It's been a lot of fun so far. I hope you've enjoyed the videos and hopefully been turned on to some new stories you might want to go check out. And we still have lots to go, so we're not running out of steam by any means. We've got a lot of great titles coming up towards the end of the month here. Marvel has just released this month some collections of some of their classic horror stuff back in the day, so definitely going to take a look at that. Today, though, I want to talk about something else that's just recently released, this week actually, and maybe it's a little slight cheat because it's not exactly specifically Halloween related, but it's supernatural, it's a little bit of horror, it's Halloween enough. So I want to talk about Ragman, DC's Ragman #1. It's a new reboot of the character, just released this Wednesday. And I've been looking at some reviews online on YouTube that other people have done, comic book channels and stuff like that, and it seems to be kind of mixed overall. Some people think it's okay, pretty decent. Other people who have been, more traditional Ragman fans from back in the day don't like it at all because of this, and that. It's really hard to judge, though, a story like this. It's issue 1 of a 6-part series, so it's just a 6-part miniseries, and issue 1. Also, I had to buy it digitally because I didn't hear about this title until late. My comic shop is able to get me a hard copy that's coming in a week or two, or next week rather. But I don't have a hard copy now to film out here in front of you. That's why you're seeing images, because I just had to go ahead and buy it digitally so I could at least read it this week and talk about it. Because I am a big, I'm a real fan of Ragman. I'm not a Ragman aficionado by any means. Some people talk about growing up with the character or can name all these different stories, and the miniseries from the 90s was great, and they can name all these things that he's been in. Most people, if you're a fan of superheroes and superhero lore, you'll probably recognize the name from the recent Arrow season, in which he was a character for about half the season, maybe. He was kind of unceremoniously written off of that show. It was kind of weird. It was interesting. I was excited to see Ragman on a live television show. That was pretty cool. And they got the powers of the costume pretty much right. The costume itself was passable for, live action. The actor they had playing him, though, was a great actor. He didn't, do anything wrong. He did a great job in the role, but his body type, he was kind of short and not, Ragman, especially in the costume, should be that tall, spindly Ragman type of, ragdollish physique anyway, so that was a little disappointing not to see that. So a lot of people might be familiar with the character from that. Now we're having him in comic books, and it does not say DC Rebirth on the cover. It's just DC. It's a limited run. That makes me think that they're trying it out. This 6-part series is clearly going to be a 6-part origin story, and they'll see how popular it is. And if it's popular enough, then maybe they'll give him an ongoing title, possibly introduce him into the Rebirth universe. And if it's not very popular, they haven't really lost anything. It was just sort of a limited series. They can just claim it was standalone and do something else with the character in the future. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Ragman first before I get to this issue, just briefly. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the character, but he's always fascinated me, first of all, because of his visuals. He's one of those characters like Ghost Rider that even if people don't know anything about them, they have such a cool visual to them, that whether it's the flaming skull or the tattered rags covered by that green cloak flowing in the wind, it's just so appealing visually. And for Ragman specifically, he's this supernatural type hero. He's always shown at night, so he's very much like a Batman, but he's not bound by the human aspect of Batman. Batman, one of his, he's not super powered. You completely have a different character if you give him any superpowers. All of his wonderful abilities are supposed to be from all of the time in his discipline and training himself and stuff like that. So with Ragman, you've got all those gothic aspects of Batman, though, not bound by the human aspect. You've got them in a supernatural element, because Roy Regan is a human, but he takes on the supernatural powers of this suit, of these rags that he wears. That visual of him, though, with that green cloak, that is such a neat choice, that green. And I don't know how the choice originally came about. Maybe it was just, it was a nice vivid color, green, so he wasn't, running around wearing black, because that gets kind of boring in a comic book. But it was also a darkish night kind of color. Maybe it was as simple as that. I know the effect, though, that it had is brilliant, because green is a color that it has a very loaded psychology behind it. Green evokes, on the one hand, life. Green is nature. Green is nurturing. And you think, okay, Ragman, he's this supernatural character. Traditionally, when he defeats a villain or a bad guy, their soul is assumed into his costume. It becomes a rag in his costume and gives him powers. And he can, when he takes on damage or something like that, one of the souls can take on the damage instead of him to save him. And it serves as a way for those souls who might have gone to hell to kind of redeem themselves through serving the suit and serving Ragman in his quest for justice and being a hero and saving people. And that redeems those souls. So they're able to go off to heaven. So in a way, you've really got the Ragman suit is a type of purgatory, honestly. And I'm it's just hard not to use Christian language, even though Roy Regan is a Jewish man, and the whole mythology of the Ragman suit and everything comes from Jewish folklore. It was a replacement for the Golem, I believe, which is fascinating too, because the Golem is, a lot of scholars can see elements of the superhero in general. We know that Superman, the first superhero, created by two young Jewish boys, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and it was almost like a Golem type character. Some resonances of the Jewish folklore of the Golem is innate in the superhero's DNA. So it's interesting that the Ragman is a replacement for that Golem. It's just kind of a direct link, and maybe it's saying something there that's interesting. But anyway, so if the suit's kind of like a purgatory here, and it's a place where the souls can be reborn, so to speak. So that green color is perfect for that. Green is also, it's the color of nature, it's the color of life and nurturing, but it's also, part of that is decay. Part of that is death. Part of that is the green mold and the green fungus that grows over things as they're decomposing in order for that energy to be broken down and reborn. And that just plays into the Ragman suit perfectly, because villains' souls who would get, subsumed into the suit are going to be broken down and decayed, so to speak, in terms of their service to the suit and their redemption. So that's a loaded color for the costume. And then the fact that the costume itself, all patched up in rags, it looks like it's maybe not a living thing. That's an interesting part of the character, and the character's always been a fascinating, fun character. Every time I've seen him in stories, even what little, I followed him. So I was very much enamored with the character, and I saw, okay, here's an issue number 1. Definitely want to jump on this. DC's been doing great things with Rebirth. Even their non-Rebirth titles, like Chuck Dixon's Bane Conquest and stuff like that, I've really enjoyed. The Commandy as well series they've been doing has been a lot of fun. So definitely wanted to give it a chance. And I read the first issue, and it's very hard to judge the run and how the run's going to be in this first issue, because especially since the whole 6-issue run is clearly going to be an origin story, you're only getting a little snapshot of story progression here in this first issue. It has to set the scene, and it does that well, and it sets up the players, and it sets up the basic premise of how the suit, how Roy gets this suit, but then it basically stops. And I think you'd really need a few more issues at least, if not the whole, before you can really judge it. That's a tricky thing about comic books. Sometimes, even if that's the case, sometimes for people, you can see something that's just a total deal breaker for you in that first issue. So I don't subscribe to that idea that you can't judge anything until you've bought it all. I mean, that's pointless, and you're not able to send a message with your dollars, whether you subscribe or not. So that's just a silly thing to say. But as long as there are no absolute deal breakers for you in this issue, I think it bears giving it a few more issues to go. So I enjoyed it enough. Some of the problems that traditional Ragman fans have had with it that I've heard, and that I would honestly share if these elements remain consistent throughout and we don't see them changed. But for example, the Ragman suit, there's no green cloak whatsoever here. And it's not really rags so much as it is bandages. And it's very interesting because here Rory finds that Rory's been in the military and he's been overseas. So I guess they're in Israel, I think, when like some sort of tomb. I don't know if it's an Egyptian tomb. I think it's an Israeli tomb. I need to go back and check. But they go into this tomb. Some of the soldiers are grave robbing basically, so they can kind of come away from the war with a little bit of loot or a little bit of reward to show for it. And his entire group there gets slaughtered by these supernatural beings, but the suit latches onto Rory and saves him And Roy comes home, he's got PTSD from his time in the military, especially from this experience watching all of his friends die. And I think that's a really cool element to give to Roy. PTSD from the military, that's going to really play well. He's already thinking he's going mad. And then with these spirits talking to him from the suit and stuff like that, that's setting up a really cool thing to play with. I hope that's done well. That's a good idea. There are other elements like, traditionally, I think Rory received the suit from his father, so Rory's technically been like the second Ragman sometimes, and that's not the case here, so I can understand how people might be upset about that. But because he finds it in that tomb, the suit is made out of bandages, and he looks like a mummy, a supernatural-ish mummy with this light glowing inside, and that's really cool. But there's no green cloak. So if rags are an absolute must for you and you can't handle bandages instead of rags, then, that might be a breaking point for you. If there's no green cloak to be had ever for this character, then that's going to kind of be a deal breaker for me, because that green cloak's just a must. But I don't need it in the very first issue of the 6-issue origin story. Maybe he gets it around issue 3 or 4 or something. This is clearly an origin story, so I'm willing to be patient and wait for that. But that green, that's like Superman's red cape, I was going to say trunks, but they refused to give us the damn trunks back. See my video for that if you're interested in my tirade. Not a tirade, it's actually a very logical argument on why superheroes like Superman need trunks. It's not just some cultural, silly thing that we've outgrown. It's actually a loaded symbol that's unique and significant to superheroes in specific ways. That's a digression. So anyway, but the green cloak is like that, I think, for Ragman. So I'm willing to wait for it. That's fine as long as he gets it eventually. But I like that the suit is more bandaged, because now it sets it, it gives it a more ancient kind of burial and afterlife and resurrection kind of themes, which plays into the suit's function even more. Whereas the rags themselves were more tied to the rags and tatters kind of old secondhand shop that his father had. And I understand, again, I'm not saying this is better necessarily. I understand people who would be real diehard, fans of the traditional Ragman might have wonderful reasons for why, no, it does need to be rags. Like I said, I'm not an aficionado of the character, but I like this well enough, and I like the little changes there. I liked Rory having the PTSD. I think that's a great setup. The way the suit kind of acts on its own, the way the souls of his buddies are in there helping him out, that's pretty cool. It's written by Fawkes. And the artist is Inaki Miranda, I think, if I'm pronouncing that right. Colorist Eva de la Cruz. And the color's pretty interesting through this. I've heard some of the reviews say, oh, it's just too, it opens as not enough color. And I don't really see that it's not enough color. I think the color is selective. That, those first scenes are nighttime, so you do have that kind of blue haze over it. They're in nighttime in a temple. It's supposed to be dark and stuff like that. But I see color quite vividly, at times. He's at his friend who passed away, his friend that didn't come back from the military. He's at his son's birthday party, and there's plenty of color there. When the suit actually takes him on, he jumps out of his building there in the suit, and the sky is red behind him. I think that's a really cool, great color. You see lots of blues. You see the yellow of the energy within the suit, the supernatural, maybe it's the soul's bot energy or whatever. That's great. So I see plenty of color. I think it's done interestingly, within this. He's very warm and vivid when he's in the suit. When he's out of the suit, it's more bluish and the dead feeling that he has. But in the dead rags, he actually looks far more alive. So that's a really cool effect. So, I recommend it. It's supernatural, and it's little, it can easily play into some great horror stories. We'll see. There's a great setup at the end there that maybe something like this will happen. I know it's not directly Halloween related, but it's current. It just came out. And if you're a Ragman fan, especially if you enjoyed him on the Arrow show, this will be a great step for you to get in even more. Of course, I don't expect this is going to be better than that 90s miniseries, and I wish I could remember the author and all of that, but look up 90s Ragman miniseries. You'll find it. That was great. So that's definitely a recommendation if you're going to get into the character. But this looks solid. I would give it a chance. It's current. It's a great place to jump on to the character for the issue 1 this week. It's just going to be a 6-issue limited run, so you're not signing up for a year's commitment or, worth of anything. So it'll be fun. Give it a chance, and we'll see where it goes. I might talk about it later, even after October and after my Halloween videos. So like I said, do keep with us. Yeah, each day, 6 o'clock, I will be posting these reviews for the rest of the month. We're just finished up our halfway, and we've still got a good 16 days to go, actually, so that's great, and I've got a lot of cool stuff planned, so, and a good variety of stuff, too. If you're not really into straight horror, you know, I've got some other great stuff, too. All of it's going to be Halloween-themed, and either superhero or comic book-themed, at the least, so a lot of great reviews to come. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these titles, if they look like something you'd like to check out, or if you've already checked them out and liked them or didn't like them, let me know. Let us get the conversation going there. Don't forget our giveaway. If all you need to do is comment on the videos and share them with people so that we can get the subscriptions up to 250. Right now they're at 237, I think. So if we meet 250 subscriptions on this channel before the 31st, before Halloween Day, then I will give away a copy of issue 1 of the Batman Nevermore, which is the Batman Edgar Allan Poe team up. So good stuff there, and until tomorrow, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the superhero and Halloween stories you love. Thanks for watching.